All right, how's everybody doing? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. It's Wednesday, September 5th. We're live here on Facebook. So I hope everybody's doing well today. Hey, I wanted to talk briefly about the special promotion we have going on for African American business owners. So Black business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, all right? So I'm the host of the African History Network show. I've been doing that for 8 years. And we sell, you can advertise with the African History Network show to promote your African American owned business, okay? And we have a special promotion right now. It's running for one more day. We have a special promotion where you get 50% off your first month, okay? 50% off your first month. And I do the African History Network show on Sunday nights, the radio show, and we put your 30-second and 60-second commercial into the audio podcast of our shows, okay? And we're on 6 different podcast platforms. We're on Blog Talk Radio and iTunes. We're on Acast, Castbox. We're on a number of different platforms. And FM Player, TuneIn.com. And we reach thousands of people across the country. So a lot of times, African-American owned businesses, they're trying to find ways to reach new customers, et cetera. This is a great way to do that, okay? You can email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, and we can get you up and running today. And if you don't have a commercial, we can record one for you. You can send us a script. We can record one for you. All right. All right. So how's everybody doing? Post the name of your African-American owned business here on the thread of the broadcast. And share this broadcast on your Facebook page also. Okay. So we have Valerie. We have Lambert. We have Bernadine. Just a few of the people watching. Okay. So if you are, say you sell, say you have an African-American owned bookstore, right? You definitely want to advertise with us. You can have a brick and mortar store, you can have an e-commerce store, but we can definitely help you reach more customers and increase your sales. If you sell African garb or you have a clothing store, okay? If you have an event where you're bringing in a speaker, like Professor Kaba Kamene, Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, someone like that, with Michelle Alexander, etc. You definitely want to advertise with the African History Network. How you doing, Kim and LaMonica? How's everybody doing? Are you all at work watching right now? Okay, so email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. You get 50% off your first month. We take the audio we take your commercial, put it into the audio podcast of our radio shows, okay? And we reach on Blog Talk, we get between the first 2 weeks of a show, we get between 4,000 to 8,000 listens, all right? And we're on a number of different podcast platforms. And African-American women are creating businesses at 6 times the national average. We know there was an article from blackenterprise.com that talked about this from March 2016. Black women business owners outpace all other startups 6 times national average. And this was a study done by, this was a 2015 State of Women-Owned Business report, okay, commissioned by American Express Open. And they found that white women-owned firms grew by 40%. They looked at an 8-year period of time. They looked at from 1997 to 2015. And they found that white women-owned companies increased by 40%. But they found that African-American owned female companies increased by 322%, okay? This was over an 18-year period of time from 1997 to 2015. And, you know, I've taught entrepreneurship. I've taught entrepreneurship for a number of years in the past. My degree's in business administration with a major in marketing. And a lot of people oftentimes are trying to find low cost, effective ways to bring on new customers. Okay. And this is a great opportunity for that. Shows are podcasted. Your commercial stay in the podcast. I do the show on Sunday nights. We usually upload the show between Monday and Tuesday. And also I do podcasts throughout the week. So sometimes I do Facebook Live broadcasts throughout the week, and then we put it into audio podcast form. So in some of those, we have commercials as well. Okay, so you get extra exposure. Okay, we got Bonnie. How you all doing? Okay, so what African-American owned businesses do we have here? Post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. And then email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com for more information. We can get you up and running today. I just uploaded Sunday night show. I just uploaded that, but it was Monday or early Tuesday morning. And we can go ahead and add your commercial to that. And then also I did a podcast yesterday. I did a Facebook Live broadcast yesterday dealing with Colin Kaepernick's new Nike deal. I'm putting that into podcast form today. So that'll go up and go on our 6 different podcast platforms that we're on that I know of. There may be some other platforms, but I know we're on Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn.com, iTunes, and Blog Talk Radio. All right, Pam, how you doing? Pam, Tamika, how's everybody doing? Keija, all right. Okay, so, and we have a long history of entrepreneurship. We have a long history of African-American entrepreneurship and organizations geared towards that as well. One of them was the Colored Merchants Association, which was created by the National Business League. And the National Business League was created by National Negro Business League that was created by Booker T. Washington. But we know that the Colored Merchants Association, that's created around 1928. And they had a big convention or conference in the spring of 1929 for 2 months. You had a group of African-American owned grocery store owners in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They organized public lectures, meetings, exhibits, and food tastings that attracted large audiences and national attention, okay? And this was the Colored Merchants Association, and what they were trying to do at this time was better compete against the chain stores. You had a increasing number of white-owned chain stores in the early 1900s. You had stores like Sears and Roebuck today called Sears, and they were acquired, if I remember correctly, by Kmart. They merged with Kmart back in around 2003 or so. You had Woolworths, F.W. Woolworths. You had the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, better known as A&P. Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, better known as A&P. You had these chain stores in the early 1900s. You had the Kresge's, SS Kresge's, things like this. And they created more competition for African-American owned stores, grocery stores, etc. All right. And so the Colored Merchants Association, they organized this this conference, etc., these groups of lectures and things like this, to better help these African-American owned businesses compete. Okay. And the Colored Merchants Association started in Alabama, okay, right around 1928. Now, April 17th of 1929, the Colored Merchants Association announced in a local newspaper an ambitious plan to create, quote, a movement looking towards the salvation of the Negro independent grocery stores through cooperative buying and teaching the lesson and value of advertising. National Negro Business League leaders promoted the grocers' efforts as a national model for African American business working in an working in an increasingly competitive marketplace. So to understand why Winston-Salem activities got so much attention, it's important to know about the changes that were taking place in the grocery business in the industry in the 1920s, and about the impact of segregation on African American store owners and shoppers. Okay, so in the 1920s, we know segregation existed. This is the year after, well, this is right after the Red Summer of 1919, when in the Red Summer of 1919, you had over 25 major race riots across the country. Okay, how you doing, Kendra? You had over 25 major race riots across the country. This was the year after World War I ended. And you have 5 million African American, you have 5 million white men who went to go fight in World War I. We know 1915 basically starts the first year of the Great Migration. You're going to have 5 to 6 million African Americans migrating from the South up north and out west. When these white men go away and fight in the war, this creates a labor vacuum for the northern factories. That vacuum is filled by African Americans migrating from the South up north, and also immigrants coming to this country as well. These white men come back. It's hard for them to find jobs because now you have these African Americans doing the jobs and immigrants, and you have racial tensions that flare all across the country. You have over 25 major race riots that break out, okay, in 1919. And then also we see the rejuvenation of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915 with the movie The Birth of a Nation, which came out February 8th, 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. All right, so in the 1920s, you have segregation laws and customs which restricted public activities based on race. We had whites only signs, colored only signs, things like this, right? So despite these restrictions, African Americans started successful business communities and created vibrant neighborhoods in the segregated South. All right. Also about 1920, you're going to have about 925,000 African American farmers. We're going to own about 15 million acres of land. We're going to lose a lot of these farmers and land during the Great Depression. We go from 900,000 farms in 1930 to about 680,000 by 1939. If you read how white folks got so rich, the untold story of American white supremacy, this is the second edition. I have a third edition in my backpack. This is the second edition. But if you read that, they break this history down. And then also, this is put out by the Nation of Islam Research Group, How White Folks Got So Rich, the Untold Story of American White Supremacy. Okay, they deal with a lot of history in here. Also, there was an article from thenation.com, that deals with how we lost 15 million acres of land, okay? And you have white terrorism, white domestic terrorism. Many of our grandfathers and grandmothers, great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers, etc., were ran out of the South by white terrorists, okay? Some of the land we sold off, but a lot of the land was stolen through legal loopholes. Us not understanding the law allowed a lot of our land to be stolen as well, okay? There was a big article from thenation.com called 15 Million Acres, African American, let's see, it's coming up now. African Americans have lost untold acres of land over the last century. An obscure legal loophole is often to blame, okay? And it talks about how we lost about 14 million acres of land, all right? And see, jobs are not going to replace that either, okay? Land was the foundation of independence. Jobs, you can't lose 14 million acres of land and then say, okay, we're going to give you some jobs working for white people. That's not going to compensate for that. All right, but let's continue here. How's everybody doing? AZ, Dawn, okay. And then African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast also. Okay, and we have a special promotion right now, running for one more day. Get 50. You can advertise with the African History Network on the audio podcast or the radio show, and you get 50% off your first month. 50% off your first month. Email me at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com for more information, and we can get you up and running today. All right, so let's continue here. The Colored Merchants Association. This is a great piece of history. Local grocery stores became the most common small business ran by African-American merchants. And we're going to have a lot of these in the South, okay? Because we were more established in the South than in the North. When the Great Migration begins, probably about 90% of African-Americans live in the South, okay? We own more land in the South. We have more farms. We're more established because that comes out of slavery. That's where the majority of African-Americans were, okay, in the South. All right, so local grocery stores become the most common small business ran by African Americans. Why? Because everybody has to eat, okay? And then also funeral homes are very popular because you're going to eat and you're going to die and you need to be buried, okay? So funeral homes are very popular. And then life insurance companies were very popular also, but probably most popular type of business we had were grocery stores. So because grocery stores were probably the most common type of business among African-American merchants, that was a big reason why the Winston-Salem grocers made such an impact. So in 1929, there was a city directory for Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it listed 373 grocery stores, 373 grocery stores in 1929 in the city directory. African Americans operated 128 of these 373 grocery stores. That's 30%. 128 out of 373. Okay, and this made up by far the largest group of African American businessmen at this time. Now, these store owners faced new challenges because of important changes in the retail trade. And these were the chain stores that were rising in the 1920s. So the Colored Merchants Association was organized to help us combat that, to help us stay in business and to navigate that, all right? So, you know, that's a very, very important piece of history. And then when we look at the National Business League, because it was the National Negro Business League that started the Colored Merchants Association. The National Negro Business League was created by Booker T. Washington, right? We know Booker T. Washington was a big influence on who? On Marcus Garvey. We know Marcus Garvey, right? We know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a member of the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, founded by Marcus Garvey in 1914 in Jamaica. Then Garvey comes to the U.S. in 1916. He's coming to the U.S. He wants to meet and work with Booker T. Washington. When he gets here, he finds out Booker T. Washington had died the year before, 1915. Okay, we know that Malcolm Little, who became Malcolm X, who became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, we know Malcolm's parents were Garveyites, and Malcolm was a Garveyite when he was a little boy. Okay, his father was a preacher. His father was a minister. His father was a leader in the local chapter, you know, where they lived, Omaha, Nebraska, and then they moved to East Lansing and then Lansing, Michigan. His father was a leader, local leader in the UNIA. So Malcolm grew up hearing this message. Okay, then he later joins the Nation of Islam when he's released from prison. Released from prison in 1952, August 1952, if I remember correctly. And the Nation of Islam is largely patterned also after the UNIA, okay? And then we see Muhammad Ali becomes a member of the Nation of Islam. We see also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is partly influenced by Marcus Garvey and respected Marcus Garvey as well. So we see Garvey's huge influence, but we see Garvey admired the do for self, the self-reliance attitude and mentality of Booker T. Washington, and Booker T. Washington was a former slave. Okay, so we see that the National Negro Business League was founded by Booker T. Washington in Boston, Massachusetts in the year 1900. And the league predated the United States Chamber of Commerce by 12 years, okay? And strives to enhance the commercial and economic prosperity of the African-American community. The National Negro Business League was formally incorporated in 1901 in New York and established hundreds of chapters across the United States, all right? In 1966, the National Negro Business League was reincorporated in Washington, D.C. and renamed the National Business League, okay? So Booker T. Washington believed that solutions to the problem of racial discrimination were primarily economic and that African-American entrepreneurship was vital. African-American entrepreneurship is vital, but the problems of racial discrimination are not because of economics. The problems of racial discrimination are because of white supremacy and racism. And we don't understand what it is and how it works. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of white supremacy. And racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, healthcare, etc., and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. That's what racism is. Racism is created to preserve, it is created for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival on a planet that's less than 10% European. Okay, so just African Americans having economic equity to Europeans does not eradicate racism. Okay, because economic parity does not, you're dealing with a system of advantage and privilege. So if African Americans had the same amount of wealth and it made the same amount of money, you're dealing with a maldistribution of wealth, power, resources. You're dealing with a maldistribution of land, etc., which all comes out of the ideology of white supremacy, which is designed to preserve genetic white survival. So we have to understand history to understand this. So this is why Booker T. Washington, you know, he was former slave, was at the Tuskegee Institute. He did some great things, but he was still a little confused on this. Okay, so Booker T. Washington believed that the solutions to the problem of racial discrimination were primarily economic and that African American entrepreneurship was vital. Thus, he founded the League to further the economic development of the African American businesses in order to achieve social equality in the American society. Okay, see, we're not going to be able to consume our way into equality. This is a mistake that we make. I'm all for economic empowerment, wealth creation, economic empowerment, two separate things. They're not the same thing, because we can all have stock portfolios valued at $1 million and we still spend 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us. So I'm all for us controlling the economic and things like this, right? But we have to understand white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, and understand how to fight against it. Okay, so members in the league included small business owners, farmers, doctors, lawyers, craftsmen, and other professionals. The league maintained directories for all major U.S. cities and incorporated African-American contacts in numerous businesses, all right? This is what they're doing in the early 1900s, okay? How's everybody doing? All right, we'll come back to this in just a minute. Let me come to your comments. Okay, so Darlene said, AHN, I guess you're referring to me. I'm Michael Imhotep, okay? The founder of the African History Network. This is my fan page. Everybody share this broadcast on Facebook and be sure to follow us here. She said, our people, AHN, are our people woke enough to even support our own? We need deprogramming. We need deprogramming. We spend about 3% of our dollars with our own businesses. If we go from 3% to 10%, we can create between 500,000 to 1 million jobs very quickly. Okay, Dawn said, I'm still learning myself. Ishiba, Forever Living Memories. What is that? What type of business is that? Forever Living Memories, okay? African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, okay? And you can advertise with the African History Network. We can help you reach thousands of potential customers across the country on a weekly basis. You can advertise on the audio podcast of our radio show that I'm the host of. It's on 6 different podcast platforms. We have a special promotion running one more day. Get 50% off your first month, 50% off your first month. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com for more information. We can get you up and running today. And if you don't have a commercial, I can record one for you. You just send me a script or bullet points, and I can record one for you. Okay, Dawn said, I know that's right. Please continue to keep us up on our history and everything else that has anything to do with us. Please, you're doing a good job. Okay, all right, thanks, Dawn. All right, and if you want to support the African History Network also, if you don't have a business, you can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there. You can order those. If you want to donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And we have a sell on the online courses that I teach. They're all on demand, dealing with African history, African American history, including understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That's a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach that deals with thousands of years of history. So the bundle pack's on sale, $60, regularly $130. That includes 10 online courses. So we posted the link here. It's also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, let's continue. Okay, so now, although the National Negro Business League primarily expanded many Black business networks and fostered a vibrant business community for African Americans, it also had very direct and indirect connections with white businesses and corporations. Oftentimes, white business leaders addressed the National Business League at their annual conventions. Booker T. Washington himself kept contacts with members of the white corporate elite, such as Andrew Carnegie and Julius Rosenwald, who was president of Sears and Roebuck and Company. The National Negro Business League established the Booker T. Washington Foundation in 1967 as a public nonprofit operating foundation to serve as the research and development arm of the organization. It also established the National Student Business League in 1974 as its collegiate division, okay? Although the influence of the league declined since its peak in the early half of the 20th century, the organization still exists today and is headquartered in Atlanta. They recently merged with the another Black Business Chamber of Commerce. They recently merged. Okay, so I think it's still called the National. It's called the National Business League, though. But they just merged with another major African American business organization, National Business Organization. Okay, all right. We've got Bonnie YoGirlRhythms.com. Is that what it is? Is it Yo Girk? What is that? What is that, Bonnie? Okay, Royal Divine Solutions. What type of business is that? Is Sheba? All right. So it's a lot of history. We have a strong history when it comes to entrepreneurship. And then what a lot of people don't understand, like Reverend Jasper Williams, who delivered the eulogy at Aretha Franklin's funeral, who wanted to talk about how much we had during segregation. These same people won't tell you that even at the height of African-American business ownership in like the 1920s, the majority of African Americans were still either poor or living in poverty, even with those owning 15 million acres of land. They also don't deal with the fact that it was racial terror inflicted upon African Americans to enforce the Jim Crow laws. And then 3, they don't want to deal with the fact that because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 56, 41,000 of U.S. interstate highway was driven through the African-American community, wiping out thousands of our businesses, wiping out our homes, things like this. This is how we lost a lot of businesses. We lost a lot in the Great Depression because of economic conditions were so bad. We lost at least 200,000 farmers during the Great Depression, and you had the Farmers Home Administration, which gave loans to white farmers so they can pay the mortgages on their farm, they can pay their workers and things like this and stay in business. And largely African-American farmers could not get these loans, so we lost a lot of our farms during the Great Depression, okay? So a lot of people don't want to, deal with that type of history. But if you read How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy, they deal with this, okay? Second edition, page 54, Farmers Home Administration, FHA, for white farmers only, Farmers Home Administration. At the end of legal slavery, blacks, so that's 1865 with the 13th Amendment, 1865 ends chattel slavery. Blacks were concentrated in the agricultural sector of America. They were more likely than whites to own farms, though they held less acreage and had poor quality tracts of land. Despite this reality, the Farmers Home Administration was set up to give loans and subsidies to white farmers to sustain and maintain their operations, okay? This is during the Great Depression, which starts in 1929 with the stock market crash. To achieve this unstated racist purpose, the FHA allowed local whites to operate the program, and the local whites, not the federal government, decided who would get those critical benefits. As a result, Black-owned farms, unable to compete with the well-subsidized and well-financed white farms, fell dramatically from about 900,000 in 1930 when the program began, okay? When the program was established, when the program began, to 682,000 in 1939, okay? We lose over 200,000 farms. Along with those farms goes land. That's just from 1930 to 1939, okay? We go from, in 1920, we had 925,000 farmers. We go from 925,000 farmers in 1920 to 45,000 farmers in 1975. 55 years later, you lose almost 900,000 farmers in a 55-year period of time, losing somewhere around 14 million acres of land or so. Many of the whites used the government money to modernize by buying tractors and evicting Black sharecroppers. So here you have the Great Depression, and even though you're a sharecropper, even though it's hard work, at least you have somewhere to stay, okay? But now sharecroppers are being evicted because the white farmers were able to use the money from the federal government to mechanize their farms, to become more efficient and evict Black sharecroppers. Congress amended the law to say that half the money should go to those tenant farmers, the sharecroppers, but the white landholders simply stole these payments, claiming, if asked about them, that debts were owed. By 1964, a study found that every program administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture was rife with racial discrimination, and the federal loans were used by local white administrators to retaliate against Black farmers for their support of civil rights efforts or for simply voting or attempting to vote. Also, it was backlash because you had African-American sharecroppers who were organizing unions trying to get fair pay and decent conditions and things like this. It was backlash for all of that as well, okay? So that is, that's page 54 of the second edition of How White Folks Got So Rich: The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. Okay, this is put out. This is put out by the Nation of Islam Research Group. You can get this probably from finalcall.com. This is the section Farmers Home Administration. The FHA, the Farmers Home Administration, was one of those policies, one of those government departments, organizations created by the New Deal from President Roosevelt. Okay. All right. Okay, Bonnie, yes, yoga, meditation. Okay. What other African-American business owners we have here? Post the name of your business. Too Tall, Jones Images, Photography Services. Okay. All right. And email us at customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com. You can advertise with the African History Network on our radio show, the podcast of our radio show, the African History Network show that I'm the host of. We're on 6 different podcast platforms. We reach thousands of people across the country on a weekly basis. So email us at customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com. We can get you up and running today. All right, so look, I got to get out of here. Those in Philadelphia, I'll be in Philadelphia September 27th through the 30th for the All Black National Convention that Dr. Boyce Watkins does. I'm one of the panelists, and I'll be a vendor there as well. Okay. I'm on a panel discussion dealing with why we must buy black. I may be on another panel, I'm not sure, but that's the one that I know of. All right. Okay. So, hey, remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.